Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Things I've Learned from Barry Harris. Today I thought we would talk about putting a couple of Barry's ideas together to create phrases while playing, and in this instance I thought maybe we could look at the blues. So we'll take a look at the blues in B flat. Maybe we'll just cover the first couple of bars. So the scales for the blues, just for a normal blues, in the first couple of bars would be B flat 7 scale, then E flat 7 scale. And that's about as far as we'll do just to create the lines with it. So we got B flat 7 scale. Now what I thought we would look at is he has this idea of his chromatic scale, which is really beautiful. And I talked about this in one of the previous episodes, but it's definitely worth mentioning again. And his chromatic scale is this: any place where you have a chromatic in between two notes, you use that chromatic. But in a place where you don't have a chromatic between two notes, like in the instance of a dominant scale, between the third and the fourth, or between the sixth and the seventh, you use the scale note higher. So for instance, if I'm going to play B flat 7 scale, in between B flat and C, I have a half step. In between C and D, I have a half step. In between D and E flat, I have no half step, so I have to insert one. So I put the F. So now that's what this sounds like. And then between E flat and F, a natural half step. In between F and G, natural half step. In between G and A flat, that's where I have to do that same thing where I jump up to the next scale note. So I do that. And then back to the original, which is A flat to B flat. So here's what the scale would sound like in its entirety. And down. So that's B flat 7. Or you could actually do it the octave higher. So the next thing that we'll be looking at, well, when we look at that, we can look at it in, let's say if we're just going to go up a second, so we could say next second, next second, next second, next one, next one, next one, or we can do it from here, here, and then down, same thing. So that's just playing seconds. You can also play thirds. And down. Okay, so that tackles that one aspect, which is his chromatic scale, which is really beautiful. There's a million things you can do with it. But I thought would be interesting is if we tie that in with something else that he talks about that other people have played before, obviously, but it's his idea of what he calls a pivot. Now, a pivot is this. Naturally, if we're going to play, let's say, a chord, and for his definition of a chord, it's play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play another note. So that's 4 notes. Okay. So what he likes to do on a pivot is he says you play the first note, that's naturally the chord up. But a pivot just means hit this first note and then play the next 3 notes down an octave. So now you get this instead of this, you get this. Let's do it up from the second. Let's do it from the third. Do it from the fourth. Sorry. From the fifth. From the sixth. From the seventh. Then back to the tonic again. So the idea is, let's take maybe those two things and let's come up with a line that runs from B flat 7 to E flat 7. So let's just start randomly. Let's say we'll start on the tonic, and we'll do, let's do a second. So there's our first second with Barry's chromatic scale. And then when we get to this note, instead of going up a chord, we're going to pivot. So there's our first phrase. 1, 2, 3. So let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there it is in two different places. I've started on the first beat and I started on a different beat. I started on the second beat, I think, the second time. So that's an idea. So how about if we, instead of saying, if we did a whole third down, which would be this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty. How about a second from the second, let's say. That's pretty too. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really pretty. Let's start on the third. Let's start on the third. Third to the second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a pretty one too. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a pretty one too. Let's do starting from the third, and we'll do a third down. That's a nice one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really nice. Let's start from the 4 and do a second. Let's see. Let's see. That's a nice one. 1, 2, 3, 4. But see, this is what I mean, coming up with phrases using all of Barry's ideas. Let's start on the, let's just pick a random. Let's start on the 6th. It's a pretty phrase. Let's start on the 6th, and we'll do totally chromatic down to the 4. His chromatic scale down to the 4. Let's see what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty way to start a blues. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really pretty to start a blues like that on the 6th. How about if we start on the flat 7th? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a nice one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a really pretty one. How about starting on the second beat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So even if you take these ideas and start them on different beats, you start creating your own lines using these ideas of his half steps or his pivots, and you could add a whole bunch of things. I mean his pivots are so important. So many people ask me about those. Those are so important. But this chromatic scale is really beautiful. And I think a friend of mine corrected me. He came up with this I think he came up with this idea of his chromatic scale in about 1998, either 97 or 98. And I remember him going over it, and it was a totally new thing. None of us had ever heard of it before. But see how many beautiful things you can come up with. And it gets you out of trouble. If you really know your chromatic scale and where you can put your half steps, it gets you out of trouble every time. And it also creates beautiful lines. I like this one. This one's a nice one. Let's see. So, it's just a short little video today, but it's just to show you how to maybe make that transition from taking the things that you're practicing of Barry's method and then trying to utilize them in a phrase, in a line. So you take any song. You could take I Got Rhythm, you could take a blues, you could take a standard that you're working on and say, how am I going to make some music out of this particular idea? Because it's great to practice them, it's great to get them in your fingers, but then you have to have the ability to improvise with them. That's the whole point of it. And it takes time, and it might seem like, in comparison to a lot of other people, it might seem like we're really getting bogged down in the minutia of things, but really this is what creates, or this is what separates somebody, one person's playing from another person's playing. If a person really spends time thinking about all these things and all the different places that you could put these half steps or that you could put these pivots, just imagine how much more creative their phrases are going to be, other than just running up and down scales, which can tend to be boring. I imagine even for the person running up and down scales, it can be boring after a while. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, episode 48 of creating lines with Barry's chromatic scale and pivots. Until next time, thanks.